Welcome to NFL Daily, where 14-2 just doesn't go as far as it used to. I'm Gregg Rosenthal in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with my friend Patrick Claybon, and looking, as always, at Nick Shook in Cleveland, the uncle of the year. How was your Christmas, Shook?
It was fantastic. Got to hang out with the kids. Good family time. A Merry Christmas to all.
Yes, and I hope you had one as well. Of course, we've talked to Patrick since that preview show. It feels like a long time ago already.
Yeah, because we had NFL games wrapped across, like we do a daily podcast. They do daily NFL games. It was a lot. It was a lot this week.
It was, and it's going to be a different sort of recap show because, look, TNF is in this game. That game exists. Seattle, Chicago. That is a game
happened.
That actually happened. I thought the game of the week was on Saturday in the middle window, and we're going to get to that too. We're going to really construct this show like NFC, AFC. But I first wanted to start at least with what to me was the most important game of the day on Sunday. The only game that included two teams over 10 wins. Let's go to Minnesota.
Second and goal from the 9. Sam Darnold goes out of the shotgun. Cam Akers joins him to his left. Akers jumps to the right, now back to the left. Darnold out of the shotgun, takes the snap, swings it to Akers, turns it up to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! Cam Akers with his third touchdown this season, and Minnesota responds beautifully and opens up the lead 26-10.
Vikings and Cam Akers wouldn't be the last big play he made in that game. Yes, Minnesota got a 17-point lead, and then they held on at the very end, 27-25, and it was a third down completion to Cam Akers on a tricky pass as he's backing away from Sam Darnold, and they're able to run out the clock after sweating it out more than they expected to late. Very similar to the Week 4 game between the Vikings and the Packers. Almost played out the same way, where it was very one-sided for about 52, 53 minutes. The Packers made it interesting, and yet it feels like the better team won this game, and Patrick is just beaming because he had faith in Sam Darnold and the Vikings, and I did not. You were right. You were right to pick him.
Well, it was my collective lack of faith in Sam Darnold in these moments, but we got there again. Yeah. Once again, a 3rd and 3 where throughout the entire fourth quarter, we're doing Game Day Live. I'm on with Scott Pioli. And there was a first down pass attempt when the Vikings were trying to burn clock after Emmanuel Wilson scored to make it 27-16. The Packers go for 2. It's 27-18. Very first play, Sam Darnold drops back to pass, and Scott's like, you got to run the ball. Well, Kevin O'Connell stuck with the pass, and then they go to that final moment where Cam Akers eventually stumbles. Before that, there's a completion to Justin Jefferson where he not only got interfered with, he also got held on that play. And they get to make it 3rd and about 2. And Sam Darnold comes up with the pass to Cam Akers. He catches it off his shoelaces there. And you mentioned that Week 4 game. The difference in that game was it was an onside kick at the end. Here the Vikings had to squeeze the life out of the Green Bay Packers, and they ultimately did. And again, not hiding their quarterback, just relying on Sam Darnold, who is now 4 touchdowns. If he has 4 touchdowns, he ties Dante Culpepper in 2004 for the most passing touchdowns in Vikings history in a single season if he can get 4 in the final game against the Lions, Greg.
Well, I don't think he nearly stacks up to that Culpepper season, which I would rank in the top 5 quarterback seasons of all time. I've talked about this before. It happened to be in a Peyton Manning season, but it was one of the best seasons ever. But it is the best Vikings quarterback season since Brett Favre. Yep. I don't even think there's any question. Better than any Cousins season or Keenum or whoever else you want to throw out there. There was that Favre season that was pretty electric. And that faith was telling because Nick, Sam Darnold did have a couple plays, and Tom Brady's getting nervous at the end where he did have an interception in the second half, and he had a couple that were close, and yet the faith and the belief that O'Connell has in him, they keep throwing, and on that 2nd and 12, Darnold's on a full sprint. That just shows to me how great Justin Jefferson is. He's one of the best wide receivers I've ever seen in my lifetime, and why he's so great is he's elite at literally every possible facet of being a wide receiver, including on a play like that, running full sprint, getting interfered with, and being physical enough to make that catch. And I don't need to say that he's clutch because he's just always great, but he does always seem to play his best when it really matters. And that was a great throw by Darnold as well. Or else, the Packers would have got this ball back in a chance to to win the game, partly because they went for 2 and partly because they suddenly just found life in the last 7 minutes, when really before that, this thing was so one-sided. At one point, Shook, it was 400 and something yards to 182. Like, it looked like two teams that didn't belong on the same field, which, are you a little concerned about the Packers after this?
Not concerned necessarily. I mean, if you look at who they've lost to, all those teams that they've lost to have like 12 plus wins. Like it's the Lions, it's the Vikings twice, it's the Eagles. Like that's basically who they.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to beat maybe all 3 of those to go to the Super Bowl. So that's
yeah,
a problem.
But you know what? At least that's your test. Like, yeah, okay, maybe that's your ceiling right now, but at least you have the tests and the history. I guess the only downside to this is the fact that it did look so much like the first game that they played, and then that it was very lopsided for much of it, and then they woke up in the fourth quarter. Packers fans have to be thinking, God, I wish you would have made those adjustments at halftime instead of the fourth quarter. But sometimes that's the way things go, especially against defenses that are talented and are equipped to stop your offense. So I'm not super concerned. I don't think that the Packers, like, I'm not going to pick them to go win the Super Bowl right now, but they'll definitely be in the hunt in the playoffs. They're going to be a tough out. And who knows, man? I mean, this is a weird sport sometimes. Bounce the ball goes one way or the other. Maybe suddenly they're on the flip side of this, because they were essentially one stop away from getting one more shot at going down the field and potentially winning this game. So they're not far away. It's just, it can be frustrating for them. They're still a very strong team overall. And by the way, that 2-point conversion attempt that the Vikings failed on.
Yes.
Talk about ambitious, huh? Create a little Ben Johnson out of him. Yeah. Let's have a little pitch backwards, see if it works. That was kind of fun.
Yeah. I'm a little more concerned about the Packers to show up. And yeah, the yardage total with about 9 minutes to go was 418 to 137. I mean, that's a beatdown. And I thought it was about the coaches and the players. I thought both sides of the ball, Matt LaFleur, and you mentioned, great point by you, Shook, about making adjustments late. LaFleur said it after the game that they were too late to make adjustments to what Flores was doing. And what he was doing was playing man coverage at a higher rate than he had played at any point in the season. After the first time they played, he played man coverage at the lowest rate. And that's, to me, kind of the magic of this Vikings team, that they've been together so long. He can spin the dial in so many different ways. It can really confuse great offensive coordinators or play callers like LaFleur and certainly Jordan Love. Love ends up 8 for 15 for 62 yards against that man coverage for 4.1 yards per attempt, and it was even worse going into that final stretch. And you have Van Ginkel making big plays. You had Blake Cashman. Everyone was in the right place. Jordan Love, that is, seemed like his head was swimming. Where on the other side, Darnold is just firing the ball into the middle of the field. And at one point, he was like 22 for 23 over the middle of the field for 200-plus yards. And they knew the weaknesses that they wanted to attack on the Packers' defense, and they were just so disciplined going after over and over. So to me, it's coaching and it's the players too, where I looked at these two teams, I said, okay, one of them, now I would be surprised if the Packers are in the Super Bowl. Like, I've been saying, like, the Packers are one of the 5 or 6 best teams, but yeah, I would be shocked if they run the table against two of these teams. Like, let's say they get the Rams in the first round, you win that, but you got to win beat two of these teams that they've had trouble with. I would be a little shocked. To me, the Vikings and the Lions and the Eagles are a clear tier above.
And to Shook's point,
that's fine. Not everyone can win the Super Bowl.
It's not like the Packers have gotten run off the field by those teams, right? They've been in these games. They're in this game today. They actually get pressure on Sam Darnold 36% of the time. Problem is, Sam was 10 of 15 for 133 with 2 touchdowns under pressure. Now, he did have that ball that was picked off by Carrington Ballantyne, which gave the Packers their first touchdown of the game, kind of let the Packers back in the game at that point. And there were a couple of passes that sailed high, which seems like Sam's having a tendency right now to kind of overstride and overshoot receivers and have the ball go dangerously. But Jordan Love pressured 32% of the time, 4 of 8 for 41 yards, where they're kind of figuring out, where does Flores send them? How is he sending them? And that extra second, that extra step, slowing down the passing game. They got some action with Romeo Doubs late. My concern would be there was a lot of Manny Wilson towards the end of the game. I don't know if that's saving Josh Jacobs, because the difference in this game in the 5 and the 6 seed is like a road playoff game here at SoFi or a road playoff game at the Link against the Eagles. And so there was something for the Packers to play for here, and
Yeah, or even potentially at the NFC South winner if they had won this game and won out, but that's not going to happen. I think both starting running backs were just banged up at the end of this game. Yeah, Aaron Jones was not on the field. That's why Cam Akers was out there, and Josh Jacobs, who had a good game. And they ran the ball well at first, and then there was just a couple situations. They go for it on 4th and 2, and Brady's bemoaning that, and they don't get it. I don't have a big problem with that. You never know if they're going to make the kick anyways, as we saw Will Reichert, who's been fantastic all year, missed a couple kicks today for the Vikings that kept it close. And you got a ball to your best player, Jaden Reed, and he dropped it on the play. And then there was another, on one of Reichert's misses, it didn't count because they called kind of a phantom offsides that made Matt LaFleur lose his
He called timeout specifically to yell at the official.
Yeah, which was amazing. I love that. And he was right on that one. That did cost them 3 points. It just seems to me like, yes, you can look at the pressure numbers, Shook, but I just felt like the Vikings offensive line was much better than the Packers offensive line. Like maybe at the end of the game, Darnold's holding on to the ball. They were sending some blitzes there, but there were many plays where Darnold had all day to throw. And with those receivers and the route combinations, like it could have been worse. I was watching this game and thinking it was a miracle that the Packers were in it late in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I also, today was the first time I got the 2016 Falcons vibes with these Vikings. And I think it's because of the receiving core, and it's really because, you talked about Sam getting a little like risky there and throwing a pick in the second half and making it kind of close. But at the same time, you live with that because of the other throws that he makes, the throws that are in tight windows, the throw that he makes to Jordan Addison for a touchdown that's just fantastic pocket presence and maneuvering before he lets it rip. Like, you don't have Matt Ryan back there, okay? You don't have an NFL MVP in 2016 back there, but for the first time today, I was like, oh, they feel a lot like that Atlanta team did, and they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So we'll see.
Darnold is playing that well. I'm with you. It sets up a fascinating Week 18 matchup with the Lions. As we tape this, we don't have the schedule on Week 18, but we do know that matchup in the Lions play on Monday night will be for the 1 seed in the NFC. That is absolutely amazing. It's kind of all been leading to this. Okay, so that was the game of the day. It was the afternoon. Everyone's watching that. And yet, to me, the actual game of the week, and we're going to dive deep into the whole AFC playoff picture now, was on Saturday. It was Bengals. It was Broncos. And yes, that wild card in the AFC is a little spicier on Sunday night than it was entering Week 17. Let's go to Paycor.
The Bengals trying to win it from the 3-yard line of Denver. Burrow looking to throw. His pass, it is caught by T. Higgins. Touchdown.
It's over.
Bengals. And the final playoff spot in the AFC will not be decided until the final week of the regular season. The Cincinnati Bengals are still alive as Joe Burrow hits T. Higgins for a game-winning touchdown.
Oh, great call there by Dan Horde and Dave Lapham on WCKY. T. Higgins did it. Joe Burrow got it done in a game that resembled so many other games that the Bengals found ways to lose despite their best receivers and their quarterback playing otherworldly football. They actually got it done, and it was partly because T. Higgins goes 11 for 131 and 3 touchdowns. And if you hear Dave Lapham kind of identifying that ends the game, maybe it's because Bengals fans have never heard an overtime touchdown. It was the first one in franchise history. I couldn't believe that. This franchise has been around for a long time. It's literally never happened before. Just one of many ways Joe Burrow and in this case T. Higgins are kind of breaking barriers. As this was happening, Shook, are you thinking, okay, this is why the Bengals are where they are? Or are you thinking these are two teams that don't really look like playoff teams? Or are you enjoying the high moments and thinking, okay, this is the best game of the week?
I'm shouting at my TV when T. Higgins makes that touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone, for one. Like, definitely reacted that way because that was a phenomenal throw and catch. A great partnership between Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, who had a fantastic day, as you just said. But no, I'm not thinking that these teams maybe don't deserve to be in the playoffs. I'm thinking what a great football game this is. First off, Denver, what a great job you did defensively for most of this game, holding Cincinnati out of the end zone a couple of times down there. That was huge. I'm also thinking in my head, Bengals, you're wasting opportunities. You're going to blow it right here. And then when they didn't, I was jubilant for them because they've been through so much this year. I would like to see them actually get into the playoffs next week. It's going to cost the Broncos a spot if they get in there, but these are two teams that are close. They're both deserving of a playoff spot, a wild card spot. These are two wild card teams in my mind that put on a great show on Saturday, and now we leave it up to the fate of Week 18 to figure out who it is.
Yeah, it's disappointing for the Broncos to not be able to close it out here, but sometimes you got to just give credit to the other team. The 3rd and 9 that Burrow had navigating the pocket, and he just fits it into the tiniest window to T was amazing. You could make a top 5 T. Higgins catches from Joe Burrow, plays in this game, and it'd be a great highlight. Like, go watch that. The one you mentioned into the corner, like, just over and over, Burrow was giving his guy a chance to win it, and he took 15 hits in this game, Burrow. He was sacked 6 times. The Broncos defense, even though they were giving up all sorts of yards, I agree with Nick, did a good job minimizing the damage and making it hard on Burrow, and yet he just kept coming at him and at him. The difference today Saturday was the defense did enough. They were just like a normal defense. They weren't great, but they weren't terrible, and they did give up a pretty egregious late drive to the Broncos. But even that one, you give credit to the Broncos for making a crazy catch, Marvin Mims.
Yeah, as the game started to progress and gets into the fourth quarter, you really saw that this Bengals pass rush did not have it. They weren't getting pressure on Bo Nix without blitzing, and it was actually really a gift to them where there was a 2nd down and Sean Payton called a screen. The Bengals were able to blow that up, and they got pushed back behind the sticks. And then the very next play, Bo Nix throws an interception. I believe it was
Jermaine Pratt,
comes up with the interception, and that gives the ball back. Eventually, T. Higgins actually has a fumble forced by Patrick Surtain. He makes up for that after that because he pretty much goes nuclear after that with 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. But there were chances that the Broncos had to end this game, including at the end of regulation. Bo Nix wanted to go for 2. Sean Payton looking over, telling Bo, "Hey, if we get a tie, none of this matters." And then after the Bengals don't score on their first overtime possession, the Broncos take it pretty conservatively, Greg.
Yeah.
And give them the ball back, leading to that.
I think the tie got in Sean Payton's head, and I think he made a big mistake. Let's listen, because there was so much game management stuff. It was a fascinating game at the end here.
Much worse on the Bengals side.
I don't think it was as bad as
Greg.
you think, actually. I really don't. But the Broncos get the ball back in regulation with 1:29 to go, and Bo Nix was all over the place in this game. A really poor first half, I would say, just in terms of their passing production. Even though he only had 2 incompletions, they were averaging 4 yards per attempt. They weren't really moving the ball. Then he comes out of halftime, has one of the best throws of the year, the longest air yard throw of the year for a touchdown, has that egregious interception, but has another touchdown drive. Then he gets the ball back with 1:29, knowing that he needs a touchdown, and they get in a tough spot after a couple nice plays to get to midfield. It's 4th and 8, and I thought this could have been one of the plays of the year.
Burton, the fullback, to the left of Nix. Bengals rush 4. Nix deep drop, now rolls to his right, throws a ball. He wants Mims in the corner of the end zone. Marvin goes up, makes the catch. That's a Denver touchdown. They are stunned here at Paycor Stadium. A 25-yard touchdown pass. Nix to Mims.
I mean, when Nix was facing immediate pressure on that play and he's just bailing out to his right and he throws that thing up, when he threw it, I thought there's 0 chance that is going to be completed. And Marvin Mims, of all people, mosses a couple defenders. That's just great football. And at that point, you go for the 2, Sean. And he's thinking about the tie, and they were going for 2, but they checked the play, and while they were reviewing it, he changed his mind. And you're absolutely right. If they tied the game, they would have gone to the playoffs, and I think that got in his head. First possession of overtime, he gets conservative. I agree. And then they get bailed out, and they get a second possession because the Bengals doink a field goal. That was the only egregious mistake I think Zach Taylor made, was not continuing to play offense in the overtime drive and kicking that field goal on 3rd down when your kicker is Cade York. I don't care how close you get. It doesn't matter. Just try to score the touchdown. Be safe maybe with the play calls or whatever, but just Keep advancing it. Don't just stop. You literally lost the game against the Ravens in overtime earlier this season doing the same thing. But he misses the kick. And then the following sequence, Nix, just misses a throw on third down that was pretty open. I almost don't want to give the Bengals defense too much credit, Shook, because the reality is Nix missed 2 open receivers on third down in overtime. And if Nix literally hits that throw where he's stepping up in the pocket in overtime and he's got someone crossing, they get a first down there, the game's basically over. And the Broncos are going to take the tie. And it's going to be extremely disappointing. So I'm glad he missed it just for the drama that we're getting week 18. But what did you think of the game management stuff and everything that went on here?
Yeah, we were deep in the tie zone at that point. And it's one of those situations where you're like, the Bengals, they have to win to stay alive. So they got to go full force, but they don't really have the game in their control right now because they're at the mercy of the Broncos offense. But it really spoke to Bo Nix as a rookie to me more than anything, which is he has these highlight moments where he throws a 51-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Mims. And it's like, I didn't even know you had that in you. I know you stepped into that to get that down there, but what a throw.
67 air yards, the second longest in Next Gen Stats history. I will give a cookie to if either of you guys know what the longest one is. This is only since 2016 that Next Gen Stats has been keeping.
Anthony Richardson.
On this very show, that is not it. I've called it one of the greatest throws of all time over and over. It's the P.J. Walker to DJ Moore throw, which just as a pure throw is maybe the best throw I've ever seen in my entire life. A couple of years ago, and then the
shocking.
Yeah, he got into that one.
It really was. I mean,
it was legendary.
Situation, accuracy, length, all of it was incredible. But man, Bo Nix, that's it. Like, he had such crazy highlights in this game, and he ends up with 219 and 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. You think he played a great game, and it's just up and down, which is going to happen with rookies. And this defense, I guess, unfortunately, was like a little more up and down. The thing I will defend Zach Taylor about, Shook, is at the end of regulation, they are going in to try to win the game, and Chase Brown injures himself sliding at the 1. Yep. And they were planning to kick the ball with about 10 seconds to go there, and Chase Brown sliding and getting hurt changed the math. And at that point, I understood going for the touchdown. Like, did you have any problem with that? Like, I got it. No. I am always looking to criticize Zach Taylor, and actually I don't think there was anything he particularly did wrong here until overtime. You got a little conservative kicking that field goal.
Well, yeah, I think that speaks to sometimes you can overmanage a game, and I think both coaches kind of did in that situation going into overtime. Both of them coached tight in overtime, which is what led to the result and the fact that you miss a field goal and everything else. But like I think sometimes in that situation you could overthink it and then cost yourself an opportunity. And let's face it, this is a Bengals offense that was twice in a goal-to-go situation and didn't convert, and they had to settle for 3 one time and turn it over on downs another time. So you can't, you're not going to count your chickens, right? Like, you're just going to get it in there when you can get it in there in a tie football game, and that's what they did. So I was fine with it, but I did, as soon as Burrow got across the goal line, which wasn't an immediate ruling, it took a second before the crowd erupted. In the back of my mind, I was like, no, they got a timeout. They still got the time.
Well, yeah, but all they could have done in theory was kneel on second down and try to score in third, and you just take away a timeout. At that point, the math had changed because Chase Brown got hurt. They would have been giving the ball back to the Broncos with 35, 40 seconds left, only needing 3. I'm with Zach Taylor. I'd rather be up 7 with a minute and a half to go and be able to prevent a touchdown. And there's no guarantee, as you said, that they even were going to score the touchdown. They were stopped in the red zone, and that might have been playing in his mind too. That's let's try to score as many points as we could at that point once the Brown injury happened.
Well, I think a big factor that maybe needs to be considered is the Broncos were trying to let them score the touchdown. That's what plays the decision making for me, where if you run that quarterback sneak when the Broncos are willing to concede the touchdown, and you don't necessarily have to score on that play, and then the Denver Broncos can use the timeout. I mean, it's a very niche scenario, because how often are you practicing having a quarterback sneak from the 1-yard line that doesn't score? But if the math is to have Chase Brown go down, which it was, right? Chase acknowledged that, and Coach Taylor acknowledged it before, then I don't necessarily know how much of the calculus that changes.
It changes a ton, because you're scoring with 10 seconds left instead of 40 seconds left. Right. That's a huge difference, 45.
And your pass rush, which hasn't been able to get to Bo Nix for the majority of the fourth quarter, immediately has them go all the way down the field and score with 14 seconds remaining in the ballgame. That's
football. It was fun. You're right, though. I mean, man, Burrow, you're right. There was so much to get into mentally and physically, but Burrow, it's why I'm really excited that they have the voting with the MVP, how they have it now, how we've been doing it on Monday nights, Shook, and maybe we'll have to revisit MVP here for Week 18, that it's a 5-person ballot. Because I don't know what Burrow's going to finish. Some people are going to push for him to get first place. I think he'll get some first place votes depending on how this happens. I think in the end he'll probably finish third or fourth. But I like that we have that document and that people will be like that he's going to be on the ballot, whereas in the past there just would have maybe been 0 Joe Burrow votes at all. And I like just as a document we see, okay, he's third or fourth. Hell, Sam Darnold might be finishing like 5th, 6th, or 7th in the MVP vote, which I think is incredible that will be a document. And so I think that's cool. And he is playing quarterback as well as anyone. He would not be my MVP vote. We do not need to litigate that here today, but my God, he is playing some incredible football. He really reminds me of next generation, like evolution of Tom Brady, like more than any other player. Just more athletic, obviously, like if Tom Brady could move, but other than that, just he reminds me more of Tom Brady than any other player I've ever watched. What a performance. I'm glad they finally got a win against a team with a winning record. So that puts them at 8-8. Broncos at 9-7. They have not clinched. The Bengals then sat back and they decided to watch what was going to happen on Sunday because they knew they needed some help. They needed the Colts and the Dolphins to lose over the next 2 weeks. They were hoping, can we get one, maybe 2 of those during Week 17? Let's go to MetLife Stadium.
Locke calls out signals. Takes the snap, play fake. Locke back to throw. Rolls to his left. He's got a lane. He's to the 5. He goes into the end zone for a touchdown. And the Giants respond. Drew Lock on a 3rd and goal at the 5 runs it in. 2:57 to go. 41-33 Giants.
Oh, Bob Papa. I don't know if he was happy or not.
I don't think anybody was. The crowd shots are hilarious.
Drew Lock was happy. That was WFAN. Giants fans, maybe not. What if I told you, Nick, that Drew Lock threw for 309 yards in a game where he only threw the ball 23 times? What if I told you he had 4 interceptions and he knocked out a former Super Bowl MVP from playoff contention? The Colts are done. The Giants win 45-33, and there was much celebration in Cincinnati.
Well, I would tell you that he has Malik Neighbors on his team.
Yes.
Because that was what happened on Tuesday. It was short passes to Malik Neighbors, and all of a sudden Neighbors was gone. Through traffic, down the field, touchdown. Another one, touchdown. He did spread the ball around really well. He went to Wan'Dale Robinson a good amount. He went to Darius Slayton for a touchdown. He looked sharp, and the numbers back it up. Efficiency-wise, like you said, 17-23 with 4 touchdowns. It's the best game Drew Lock's played in the NFL, and it came against a Colts team that had to win to stay alive. It was like, this is what happens in the league. Sometimes, every once in a while, a team that you definitely think you should dominate, who just got dominated a week prior by another team fighting for their playoff lives, comes in and has their best game of the year when it means nothing to them and leaves their fans conflicted. Do we enjoy this win? Do we get upset about the fact that our draft pick is worse? Even when things are going well, they're still going poorly for us. But it was really fun to watch. It was fun to watch Giants fans enjoy a home win for once. They were 0-8 at home going into this game, and Locke comes out and balls out, leaning on Malik Neighbors, and it opens up the rest of the offense, and they have a fantastic day against a Colts team that couldn't get out of their own way in the first half, and then mounted a comeback effort a little too late and kind of imploded down the stretch.
Yeah, the Giants fall to 4th, according to Tankathon, in the draft positioning. Still a lot to be determined there. There are 9 teams that have either 3 or 4 losses. 4 of them have 3 losses. We'll talk about them coming up, but it's kind of a come to Jesus moment, I think, for this Colts organization, Patrick. Obviously, Gus Bradley's defense in the crosshairs here. And just to piggyback on what Nick said, like, this was a Neighbors performance that just reminded you, like, he's got a little bit of Chase and Jefferson in him, that he can do every type of catch there possibly is. And
he did.
Yards after catch. Like, the second I wrote that Brian Thomas is wide receiver 1 in this class, like, definitively on Twitter, he just went a little extra. And I think the reasonable minds could disagree there, but Neighbors is special. But still, to give up 45 to the Giants in a playoff type situation is tough. And they've spent a lot of money quietly on that defense, a lot of draft picks too.
They have. They got the first player drafted on the defensive side of the ball this year. They come into MetLife, where the Giants now 34% of the points the Giants have scored at MetLife Stadium this season came in Week 17 against the Indianapolis Colts. It was that type of game, and Shook was talking about the Drew Lock's career performance. 105 of those yards were after the catch for Malik Neighbors.
Wow!
Today, including a couple of huge ones after the catch on the screen. One was 50 plus on a crosser for Malik Neighbors. But the Colts moved the ball. Joe Flacco threw for 330 yards. He had 2 interceptions, including one that ended the game. There was a 2-point conversion that could have tied the game where they run the hook and ladder, and MPJ is pitching the ball to Jonathan Taylor. And the pitch came out a little too fast, and it winds up hitting the ground, bouncing out of bounds. But
I mean, that's being kind to Jonathan Taylor. At a certain point, you do expect this great athlete that Jonathan Taylor is to be better at catching the ball. But maybe you shouldn't drop that play for him, because it's been a problem for him since he entered the league.
And ultimately, there were no catches for Jonathan Taylor through the air or on that pitch. So he did have 125 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, a strong finish for Jonathan Taylor on the ground. But we're still sitting here with this Colts defense with an opportunity again with a team that has basically done nothing at home. And after the game, Brian Daboll's talking about getting great play from a quarterback, maybe a sneak diss that's not so sneaky directed at Senior Dimes.
Do you have any inkling that you could have a big day offensively? It just hasn't been there.
Well, I think if you get good quarterback play, you have an opportunity in every game.
Wow.
He's not wrong.
It's true.
I don't think it's a sneak diss at Dimes. I think it's at the front office. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think that's a guy who's like, you're gonna effing fire me. You're gonna keep this guy who looked like a fool, frankly, on Hard Knocks, Joe Shane, and you're gonna fire me, because I think that's the expectation right now in New York, and I think that's his expectation. And I could be reading into it, but I think that was his parting shot. Was like, and I know Neighbors is the reason they got so many yards and everything today. But he's like, this is the situation you stuck me with. If at any point you had given me a quarterback.
Was it Joe Shane's call to have DeVito in? Because if DeVito doesn't get hurt, then Drew Lock's not playing in this game and having this career performance.
Fair.
And being the only quarterback this season with 4 touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown.
It's been my most lukewarm take that Drew Lock is a massive upgrade on Tommy DeVito, and actually hasn't been that bad the last few weeks. He just looks like a backup quarterback who's going to have crazy ups and downs. This game does feel more about the Colts, but it is funny to me that Shedeur Sanders supposedly wore kind of Giants-colored themed cleats at his bowl game. Did you guys know this?
Yes, the logo on them.
I'd seen them.
Kind of amazing. And now they're 4th. Although they could very easily end up with Shedeur Sanders. They could still end up with the number 1 pick. Like it's all possible.
Yeah, it's all in the air. It wouldn't have been had they lost this game, but it's all in the air.
So is the future of the Colts. So the Colts, I couldn't believe this stat. They have made the playoffs twice since 2014. Don't we think of the Colts as a better franchise than that? That's not much. They do not have a division title in the Chris Ballard era, which feels like oh, yeah, but they've been in the playoffs. It's like, I don't know. That's not a great division, and you haven't won it once in a really long stretch. Every other team in the division over that stretch has won it at least twice.
Wow.
So you can tie that to quarterback. I mean, they've had a turnstile at quarterback since the one great year with Philip Rivers.
Well,
that's part
it's
of
like, oh, my gosh. And I saw this response, so I'm stealing it. I forget who it is. It's like, oh, no, like our franchise quarterback retired 65 games ago. It's like, yeah, it's like, let's get over it.
They're living in a land of delusion where they think they're better than they are and they can stopgap the quarterback position. Then they went and drafted a guy and he got hurt after a month, but showed just enough to make you think, well, if he's healthy, he'll be great. And then he came back this year and struggled with accuracy to the point you benched him for Joe Flacco. Then he sucked. You went back to Richardson. He's hurt today. Flacco's back in. There's no stability at the position. This is why they have the problems they have. They need to look in the mirror and realize we're not as good as we think we are. But we first need to solidify quarterback, the most important position in sports, before we can do anything else. And I think that a lot of that will come down to what they do with Richardson in the offseason. I mean, not saying that they're going to move him, but they need to work on some of his fundamentals, work on the accuracy. Because if he gets that figured out, there's your answer. That's fixed.
They
And
were
then you can
better
worry
with
about
him.
everything
They would have
else.
been better today with him.
They
Quarterbacks
probably would have won today.
Quarterbacks notwithstanding, Drew Lock is going to have memorabilia in his house from this game for the rest of his life.
Right.
If it's Joe Flacco, if it's Nick Shook, if it's Gregg Rosenthal starting for the Colts, it does not matter. The New York Giants, the 2024 New York Giants scored 45 points.
That is outrageous. So obviously Gus Bradley's gone, and people have been speculating like, oh, Eberflus will come back. That's assuming Steichen's gone. Ryan Kelly spoke tearfully after the game. I think he's going to retire. This game reminds me so much of the 2021 finale that the Colts had, where they completely collapsed against a terrible Jaguars team, and it got Carson Wentz out the paint, basically. And people, now it seems obvious, but at the time that was kind of surprising after that season. I think this game gets Chris Ballard fired. I've just seen enough ways that season ends that this is the type of game that a big change happens. Whether that means Steichen goes or not, that could be up to the next GM. Like, who knows? You could see a situation, but I just have a feeling that Jim Irsay will make a change, that this game is going to have some big repercussions. So the Colts, they're out. They are no longer in the hunt. Take them off the graphic. They played in the early window. The Dolphins played in the late window. Would they stay on the graphic?
First and 10 at the 13-yard line. Play action. Huntley rolling to his right. He's going to run with the football. Going for the corner of the end zone. He's in. Touchdown.
Wow. Jimmy, I thought he was going out of bounds. He stayed in on his feet. What a run by Tyler Huntley.
What a run. What a performance. What do you know? You let a guy practice in your offense for a couple months who knows how to play at the pro level, and he looks a lot better than when you just stick him in there because he's the fourth quarterback that you can put in the lineup. 22 for 26 for 225 yards and a touchdown through the air for Huntley. He also led the team in rushing. He doubled anyone else in rushing with 52 on the ground. The Dolphins cruise 20-3. They're 8-8, and there's a real chance here, Shook, that they make the playoffs, and it's not the Broncos if the Broncos lose next week, and it's not the Bengals because the Dolphins are ahead of them in the pecking order, that it's the Dolphins at 9-8 that get into the playoffs. What do you think?
Yeah, the sneaky little backdoor entry for the Dolphins, who we all left for dead. Oh, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks ago when they looked awful before they even got Tua back, and even then they didn't look too great. And now suddenly here they are. They win a game without Tua against the Browns team that, granted, if it was pretty much any other team, it would have been a closer game because the Browns offense is that bad. But the Dolphins go on the road and get the job done. Now, I will say this. It's late December. It's supposed to be cold here. It's not. It's like 60 degrees out, but it started raining. None of that mattered to them. They were one-dimensional. None of that mattered to them because they got timely play from Calais Campbell on the defensive side, and Tyler Huntley was super efficient. He got the ball out quickly, averaging 2.37 seconds time to throw in this game. Just quick passes to Tyreek Hill, quick passes to Jonnu Smith for a touchdown, runs for a touchdown, scrambles for a big third down. You know, this game finished 20-3, and it wasn't until that Smith touchdown pass that it really was officially done. But at the same time, I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no chance the Browns come back in this game. Like, the Dolphins have this one in hand at basically 10-3, especially when they got a goal line stand on fourth down and turned the Browns away. Win they should be proud of. Or honestly, like this, you were going against enough adversity to believe, oh, this might be where our season ends. Oh, you mean the Colts lost and Tua's not playing? We're screwed. We're gonna blow it. No, they didn't blow it. They went and got the job done.
No, they didn't. Now the Browns are closest to tanking of any team in the NFL because they're playing a quarterback that clearly doesn't give them as good a chance to win as another quarterback on their roster. That's DTR. I liked what I saw out of DTR in those preseasons, and I kind of get why they just wanted to take a look at him and evaluate, and they've been able to.
The look is over.
Yeah, 48 dropbacks tonight, and they ended up with 162 passing yards. And I'm not going to go crazy giving the Dolphins flowers, but they did beat two of the accusations that I've been throwing their way in terms. I guess you're right, it's not as cold, but we killed McDaniel for not getting it done without Tua earlier in the season, and he had his quarterback ready to go. Now Tua may or may not be ready for Week 18. He has a hip injury that McDaniel said that didn't get better during the week, and that there is risk if he got hit again that it could get a lot worse. Reading between the lines, I think we're seeing Tyler Huntley again next week, which means I don't want to see them in the playoffs. They have the Jets in Week 18.
Yeah, it was that devastating hip injury that ended Tua's career at the University of Alabama. It was the concern coming into the draft. It took a long time for recovery.
He says it's unrelated for what it's worth, but that doesn't mean much to me.
Yeah, but when I hear Tua and hip, like that's immediately where my mind goes. And of course, there's the brain injury concerns that a lot of folks have. But that was other than he had ankle surgery in college as well. He had the strap ankle surgery, but it was the hip injury and all of the extensive recovery that he went through, where he misses these games this season. And as you said, you pointed it out, they just weren't prepared to play with a backup quarterback. This was the Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley that we have famously seen.
I mean,
he comes out there and makes those plays.
I mean, he made the Pro Bowl.
Greg,
it was not his
Pro Bowl
best season. It was
Tyler
the season he played 3 games. He did have a nice stretch the year before, and I'm glad This is one of those games that keeps him in the league for an extra 3 or 4 years. It's getting a little dicey.
Good, because I mean we've seen Tim Boyle play for multiple teams in 2024. Tyler Huntley, who has a Pro Bowl on his record, by the way, can still play. But the DTR and the Browns did have a 4th and goal, and he had an attempt to Jerry Jeudy where Jeudy had a solid case that Jalen Ramsey grabbed him and wrapped around and interfered with that pass attempt. But that was the best scoring opportunity. A rough-looking injury as Chop Robinson went low on Jerome Ford. He did not come back into the game. Left the game with a knee injury there. But this Dolphins team, they get a little bit of help. They can get in, and I hope they do.
So I don't. I'd rather see the Broncos or the Bengals.
If Tua's playing. Then.
Even if Tua's playing, I think, to me, the Broncos and the Bengals have been more central to my experience this season, and it would just be more interesting. What am I even putting the Broncos in there? I just want to see Joe Burrow in the playoffs. Like, Dolphins or Broncos, whatever. I don't care between the two of them. I apologize to you, Dolphins. But, don't be mad that we all would rather see Joe Burrow in the playoffs. And I was saying all week, weird Tyreek Hill vibes, that it was a squeaky wheel type of game for him. 9 targets, 9 catches, 105 yards. All he needed was Snoop Huntley to get in there to get off the schneid. Although there was one play where he got the ball and you just thought you were going to see that Tyreek for a long play, and they got him
backwards.
And they got him by the foot. No, not that one. Another one. It's just and they got him from behind, just like by the ankles, and that's been happening a little more with Tyreek Hill. All right, let's take a quick break because that was it for the wild card. It's all set up for a 3-team battle. The Broncos will play the Chiefs next week. Could be against their backups. We don't know that for sure. We don't know at all. The Bengals will have the Steelers, tough game, and the Dolphins. Yes, they could sneak in the back door against the Jets. Let's talk a little more about a team after the break that clinched their spot.
Pistol formation. Herbert takes the snap to throw. They rush 4 and takes a shot downfield. Has McConkey caught. Touchdown! Chargers! Lad McConkey fly that plane back to the sideline. And what a way for McConkey to set the Charger rookie record for most receiving yards in a season. He does it on that grab, a 40-yarder for his 2nd touchdown of the game. Thank you, Elliott Wolf.
Oh.
Calling money because he talks cash.
Fired by Matt Money Smith on KYSR. Yes, Money. You said what some Patriots fans were thinking. I was thinking was, this is the guy that you traded back for to take Jalen Polk, and you passed on a somewhat undersized white receiver, Lad McConkey, just eating you up. McConkey, one of 4 rookie receivers to go over 1,000 yards, by the way. First time in NFL history that's ever happened. This Chargers team is awesome. They won 40-7. They only punted twice. They had 428 yards, a 55% success rate. Herbert just going absolutely nuts. They're going for 4th downs at midfield with 20 seconds left in the first half. Total confidence, total trust. He comes through in that situation. Great pass, bro. Lad is awesome. How dangerous do you think this Chargers team is now that the offense is kind of cranking up a little bit?
All it took apparently was the Buccaneers to come out here and lay the wood to them. And then the past 2 weeks, the Chargers have been unstoppable, where, as we saw New England give Buffalo a really solid game. I thought that they would move the ball and make this. No, it was dominant from wire to wire. and perhaps Ladd McConkey extra motivated to get Elliott Wolf as money into.
I think he's happy to be playing with Justin Herbert. Not that Drake May would be bad, but he's in a much better, more stable situation. More on that in a second, though. A couple injuries in this game: Josh Palmer and Elijah Molden, and both got hurt. Elijah Molden's their slot corner and had come back for this game. They need it. But man, I do think this matters. Beating up on a bad defense like the Patriots shook, just because we hadn't seen explosive games like this from the Chargers offense previously, and now they've done it 2 straight weeks. Even J.K. Dobbins got going at the end. Wasn't amazing, but their success rate was pretty high. He was efficient overall, and yeah, man, they hit 421 yards to 181. Total dominance by the offensive line, which, granted, it's against one of the worst pass rushers I've ever seen in terms of the Patriots. But that's what you do. You stomp on bad teams. That's what great teams do. Maybe the Chargers are the team you don't want to play in the AFC.
Yeah, when Daniel Okwale is receiving praise during a blowout game as potentially the Patriots' best defensive lineman, I think you know what kind of front you're facing.
Yeah.
But I will say this. It was a perfect time to activate J.K. Dobbins from IR and get back and kind of get his feet underneath him again. He averaged 4 yards a carry in this game. You can just see how much better this offense is when they can run the ball effectively, which they have not been able to do without him for his duration of his stay on IR. So getting him back was big. But yeah, I would agree too. I mean, Herbert had all day to throw. Like, they could do whatever they wanted offensively against this defense. It was elementary for them. It was just like cruise. It was just a Sunday cruise, even though it happened on a Saturday for the Chargers in this game. One of the most lopsided games I've seen all year, because the Patriots, the operation's just terrible on both sides of the ball. But I don't know if I caution against it because you are playing the Patriots. Like, I wouldn't think, okay, suddenly they're going to be a team that can just explode at any point.
Fair, but I just thought it was Herbert's 2 best games of the season, perhaps in a row. To do it against the Broncos, a much better defense, obviously.
That's more important.
Weighs heavily, but to do it again, they weren't having games like this earlier in the year, no matter who they were playing. Now, the Patriots played a game, unfortunately, that is the type of game that gets people fired. Now, whether that's coordinators, whether that's Gerard Mayo, whether that's Elliott Wolf, like, who knows? There's really no way to guess, but I think the confusion is just obvious. The offensive line is so confused in terms of like when to snap the ball, where to go, like just really basic stuff. Ramondre Stevenson, according to Gerard Mayo, was going to be benched. He said it 30 minutes before the game on the radio. He also said it to the broadcast crew. I asked Chris Rose about it. He said it to them. It was actually Van Pelt. Said it came from that he was going to sit to start the game. And then he just was out there. And it's like, it's a small thing, but just keeps happening. Like the disorganization. There's some buzz about people that have been around at their practices that are just like, that it's not professional. Like that it's just sloppy. And it shows. Tom Curran said something to me that stuck with me, which is like, you can't be this bad on the field and this bad off. And that's what I think this coaching staff is. And it sucks. Like Keon White is out here straight up saying more or less we need to change the coaches. Like that something needs to change. It's not working. And Gerard Mayo, again, goes on the record and said, yeah, that was just a miscommunication. We had to talk about it. And they asked White about it after the game. He's like, yeah, we talked about it, but I stand by what I said. Changes need to happen. And it's just, it's not great, and I think 2 things can be true, Patrick, because I think it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable situation. 2 things can be true. The New England crowd and fan base can be harder on Gerard Mayo because he's a black head coach than I think they would be otherwise. And that it would be unfortunate for Mayo, given a really tough situation, to be fired after 1 year. And that there is something to that. And then number 2, they can be one of the worst coached teams like I've ever seen. That just on a basic level, it's not happening. And at a level that he reminds me more of one coach than any other. And it was a man that coached Nick Shook's team, and it was Freddie Kitchens. And that's kind of who Mayo reminds me of, because it's just a total mess.
Yeah,
I think it's obvious.
Yeah, it can be a mess. And there's hopefully another opportunity if this is the end for Gerard Mayo. I
don't know that it will be. I don't know.
I would just look at the roster in totality and ask, like, how many of these guys are going to be contributing to winning rosters years down the line.
Yep.
We've chronicled the problems up front. They do get 7 points in this game. Those 7 points have nothing to do with coaching. It's Pop Douglas and Drake May making a play when the Chargers jump off sides, one of the few Chargers mistakes that happened in this game that ultimately lead to 7 points. And so I don't know what the long-term aspirations are. I think, 1 year firing after you get rid of a legendary head coach after a weird run where you've got sneak disses across multiple venues and documentaries and Netflix comedy specials and all of these.
It's all bad. It's all bad.
That go on where, but ultimately, I think perhaps it'll be best for both parties, Rod Mayo and the Patriots fan base, if somebody else is coaching. I know personally how I feel, that, I'd love for the Patriots fan base to be mad at somebody else and talk about somebody else's mistakes. But, he's a Patriot. Came up on the alleged Patriot way, and we'll see how things turn out in the future.
Let's listen to Steve Weish, our friend who's been getting it done lately. I mean, he's on Netflix, getting watched by 25 million people, and then he flies over to Foxborough, and he's in an island game on an NFL Network. He was with Derwin James and Justin Herbert after the game.
Justin, you passed Peyton Manning for the most passing yards first 5 years in your career. What about setting your record and getting a playoff berth?
I think it says so much about the guys that we've had catching those passes. A great offensive line, giving me time to get the ball off, and guys like this getting me the ball back. So couldn't have done it without them.
Humble, right, Derwin?
Love that boy. Humble, man. Humble beast, man.
All right, congratulations, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want the intensity and the happiness, which I see out of Derwin James after every game. It's awesome.
Much happier than Justin was about that. It's so just even keeled. It's like, oh, that's neat that I did that thing.
All right, that is it from Foxborough. It is now time for the Sunday Drive presented by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry. So, yes, the Chargers, they clinched their playoff spot. Let's go to Buffalo, where the Bills were trying to clinch the number 2 seed in the AFC.
Clock down to 2. Here's the snap. Back to pass, has time. Rolling to his right, trying to buy time. Heaves it back across the field, looking for Ty Johnson, and going up and pulling it down off the roof was Keon Coleman for the touchdown.
That was Keon Coleman getting it done as part of a 40-14 victory by the Buffalo Bills. It was 40-0 while Aaron Rodgers was in the game. Tyrod came in the fourth quarter, immediately led them to 2 touchdowns. If you didn't think a lot of people enjoyed that, you're wrong. But this is about Josh Allen and the Bills already. Afterwards, Sean McDermott indicated that there will be some players they want to take a look at in Week 18. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of Josh Allen in that game because he played so well all season, and in this game they've earned their rest.
Absolutely, and I think it would be a mistake to have Josh go out there because Josh Allen only knows one speed. And so there's only bad things that could happen in this situation where they didn't really even need it today. You saw that there was a great Keon Coleman touchdown catch. Folks bemoaning Amari's targets in the last few weeks. He had a chance to go up and moss a defender for a touchdown. And meanwhile, the Jets could do absolutely nothing. They had opportunities. There was a 3rd and 1 early on one of their first drives of the game where Kenny Yeboah is running a drag. He's wide open. There is nobody within 5 yards of Aaron Rodgers, and he throws the ball at his back ankle and then is pointing to something after the play as if Kenny Yeboah should have done something differently on the play where he couldn't make a catch that was in the dirt. Then Aaron Rodgers had a personal foul pushing down a defender after he threw an interception. It was a really bad Aaron Rodgers game and a dominant win by the Bills.
We actually have sound of the referee breaking, essentially, as he called the unnecessary roughness penalty on Rodgers.
Rodgers had only 1 interception in the last 8 games, matched against 14 touchdowns.
Personal foul, unnecessary roughness.
On Rodgers?
Offense, number 8.
He laughed.
15-yard penalty.
I saw that.
First down, Buffalo.
He's like, I've never called a late hit on the quarterback the opposite way.
How about that?
Oh, man, when you think about how things end, sometimes they can be ugly. He had just taken the sack record. He's been sacked, I believe, more than a quarterback in NFL history. Is that right? And just after that, he threw his interception, his second of the day, and then was called for an unnecessary roughness penalty on a day where he ends up with 112 yards. It's easy to forget that the game was only 12-0 at that point. It was actually, the Jets defense was game for a while here until it wasn't. But a lot of credit goes to Christian Benford, who's had a really nice season, nice game. The defense plays well, and Josh out there throwing some dimes, and hell, even Mitch Trubisky was throwing dimes late in this game. That's when you know it's time to just kind of move to the postseason. Shook
1 for 1 for 69 yards and a touchdown. Mitch Trubisky, have a day, sir.
He's dialed in, baby.
It's first off, I can't believe they gave Nance and Romo this game. First off, secondly, good day for the Bills to kind of wash away some of those defensive concerns, because even the Patriots gave them a run for their money last week. To just put together a dominant performance like this, especially in the second half, that's big. Look, man, like there are scores of Aaron Rodgers haters out there that very much enjoyed this today. It's a dark time for the Jets. They have a lot of things to answer in the offseason. But I'll say one thing. Throw away that gift receipt for that pendant, Josh Allen. You can hang on to that MVP pendant, especially if you rest next week. I think you got a good shot at it now.
What, for the MVP?
Yep.
Okay, so the pendant was what? It came from his offensive line.
It was like an encrusted pendant with a 17. It was a jersey, and it said MVP where the name goes. He can keep that now.
That's cool. Well, I mean, he can.
Yeah,
keep
I mean,
it either way.
if they say he's those are the voters that matter to Josh Allen. The power of friendship.
Yeah,
team.
I don't know. I think it's gonna be close. All precincts aren't reporting, but I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how this one's going to go. I think we need
Nobody does, because it's kind of nebulous, and it's vibes based. It's like the college football playoff rankings. Who knows?
Yeah,
people always say it's a narrative award. To a point, it's also a stats award, and if Lamar Jackson ends up leading the NFL in yards per carry, yards per attempt, and has the greatest QB rating and touchdown to interception ratio in NFL history, which he has a good chance for. He has it right now in terms of TD interception. He's second all time in QB rating. Like, those are a lot of stats, and I think he'd have a chance. And who knows if Joe Burrow goes crazy? Like, maybe maybe voting for 5 people will have untold effects on it.
We'll go ranked choice.
I don't really know why that would affect it too much, but yeah, I think this game cements Rodgers getting booted if him making jokes about Brick Johnson cutting him didn't, because he actually was playing better. And just from a pure football standpoint, just because the market is so barren and the contract is so difficult, they're going to have so much dead cap. There is a football argument that's like, actually, he might as well be your bridge quarterback. But I think with the comments that he made and the way this game played out, there's less of a chance. And it's also hilarious that Tyrod Taylor has directed 3 drives this season, and he has 3 touchdown passes. So, Brick, you were right. Maybe we should have gone to Tyrod back in the day. That was the Sunday Drive presented by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry. Whatever your vibe, it's a Camry vibe. Learn more at toyota.com/Camry. So we're done with the AFC there. Bills are at the 2 spot. The 3 spot's going to be determined by the AFC North winner. That will come down to the Steelers and the Ravens in Week 18. But what about the NFC West winner? We came into the week with that wide open. Let's go all the way back to Thursday night in a game that you may or may not have watched. That's why you got to learn about it. To Chicago.
4th down and 10. Right here. Williams, shotgun snap, blitz is coming. Williams throws the ball up for grabs. The ball is intercepted. It's Woolen, comes near side, knocked out of bounds. The first takeaway of the game by the Seahawks could not have come at a better time. The fans head for the exits, and the Seahawks are going to win this ball game by a score of 6-3. In the words of Mike Holmgren many years ago, a same score in Cleveland between the Seahawks and the Browns. He said, set offensive football back 30 years, but that's okay. We'll take it.
Ooh. Great job there by our producer, Eric Roberts, getting that sell the team chant in. And yeah, they went hard at it during the Amazon post-game show. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Seahawks are going to win this division either, but I wanted to go in chronological order to explain how this week played out. The Seahawks are at 9-7. They're well over their win total for the season. They basically are the team people are expected, except a little better maybe even, but struggling on offense. They get a win 6-3. Not a good day for my guy. Geno did not look healthy, but we were stuck watching for the last time, Shook. Actually, maybe it won't be the last time. The Bears killing the clock on themselves. I swear this has happened. I mean, how many last drives have we watched from the Bears that have just been mangled? They got the ball back with just under 6 minutes to go, and the game finished on that interception with them on the 40-yard line. Like, it took them 6 minutes to get to the 40-yard line when the clock was really important, and they only ended up with 179 yards. A lot of them was on that last drive. It was just a totally dominant effort by the Seahawks defense. At least gave them a chance entering the rest of the weekend. I don't know what you want to say about this game, Nick.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I had a flashback to being in my grandparents' kitchen and considering a second helping of Thanksgiving dinner when I watched that final drive. Because that looked a lot like their loss in Detroit moments before Matt Eberflus was fired the next day. Rough for the Bears. It sent off a lot of people online saying Madden players would be better at managing clock than the Bears coaches have been this season, which, okay, all right, that's a shot. You're taking a shot there. But yeah, this is kind of feels like the way the Seahawks have been trending for the last few weeks, which is like, you kind of get dominated by the Packers once you lose Geno in that game and Sam Howell gets in there. And it's just like, it's almost like they're running out of steam. Like they started to figure it out defensively and they peaked and now they're just out of gas, which I guess that's still better than what we thought. You talked about the win total. They're past that. So good season, but are there moral victories? I don't think there are. So it's going to be disappointing ultimately in the end. And this game kind of captured that.
Yeah, Geno wasn't moving well in this game. And I don't know if it was the injury, but he only attempted 5 throws over 10 yards, and most of those were late. Before that, there was nothing past the line of scrimmage. He was limping a little bit out there. Caleb, by the way, on throws over 10 yards, 1 for 9 for 15 yards and an interception. I think I know which play that was, which was his best play of the game,
down.
Which came on the. Was that the fourth down?
To Odunze?
The fourth down throw to, yeah.
Okay, so his next best play in the game, though, I thought was telling, which was after he fumbled the snap, because it just let him be like, okay, I got to go make a play. And I do think has this weird mental thing going on where he's just trying to win from the pocket and trying almost not to make plays. And the best plays he make, like that fourth down to Odunze or the one after the fumble, is when he just goes out there and makes Caleb plays. I mean, he actually had a number of great throws in this game. One was a touchdown that was called back. And so you saw what makes Caleb special, but otherwise it was gross. I mean, they had 7 drives that went for under 20 yards in this game.
There was an opportunity to, I believe, Keenan Allen in the middle of the field that Caleb thought about. It just seems like the process is not go out there and play football. He's overthinking, trying to do something else, and then he'll try to do too much on plays where Geno completed like 78% of his passes in this game. The Seahawks just went 5 of 13 on third down, and they couldn't move the sticks when they needed to, and ultimately leading to this 6-point game where there wasn't like this catastrophic error for them. They were just bad.
They had one fumble. They did reach Bears territory like 4 or 5 times out of 8 or 9 drives, but yeah, it was just gross.
And the Bears had every opportunity, but once again, it just seems like the poor management that we see at the end of the game is also happening during the beginning and the middle of the game, but it's a little more glaring at the end from the way things are executed, and they're people down, right? Like Thomas Brown doesn't have the bodies staff-wise to do the things that the Bears could have done earlier in the season because of the firings that happened in front of them. And so it's just bad. It was bad before. It's still bad.
So, and not only that, they're 4-12, and yet right now they have the number 9 pick in the draft. How is that even possible? We looked at it last year, and 4-13 would have had you 2 or 3 in the draft. And now they're 9th. So it's like they're getting some bad luck there. This game, and this is true of this entire week, and maybe it's my excuse making for why this show is going to have a Week 18-like length, but this Week 17 has never felt more like Week 18. And I think that's because of all the bad teams this year, because there's not going to be a lot of drama in Week 18. So there's all these like finality-type games. And do not extend the season, Goodell. I know it'd be good for, but I do think there is something to, it's such a hard sport that these teams, even winning teams like the Seahawks, you see it. Like, look at the Dolphins. Like, it's just getting late and just asking them to play another regular season game. Like, no, please don't do it. I think 17 is enough. It just imagine the Bears playing 2 more games. It just should be over. Okay.
This league thrives on parity, right? The parity exists in Tankathon now. Like, it's not near the top this year. I don't think we've even completed that parity circle graphic that we usually complete every year.
No, this is
a weird year.
This is a very non-parity. You know, there hasn't been much parity this year. It has been a year of terrible teams. Everything is built towards not making that happen. But even good teams, I mean it, by the end of the year, take on some heaviness to them. I think that's actually true about a team that's won 5 straight games. So, yeah, Saturday night, Rams knew that if they won the game against the Cardinals, they wouldn't clinch at the time, but they would up their playoff probability to about 99%. It's almost cruel what's happening to the Seahawks. They're just watching themselves die slowly, but at least they won. They did their part this week, and they watched on Saturday night, and they just hoped for the Cardinals to come through for them, because then we'd have a nice little Week 18 win-and-end game. Would they get it to SoFi?
And goal from the 5. Kyler looks to his sideline, gestures with his hands. Marvin Harrison Jr. in motion from his right. Here comes the blitz. Throw to the end zone. It is intercepted off the chest of the intended target. A diving interception by Akella Witherspoon at the front left pylon. It bounced off McBride, hung up in the air, and the Rams clinched the game with back-to-back interceptions.
That was J.B. Long, our friend, on KSBN, and a little cameo there by Maurice Jones-Drew.
Wow.
We're trying to get Maurice on the Monday night recap.
Greg's putting screws to him.
He's playing coy. So if you're listening, add him on Twitter and say you want to hear him because you're such big MJD fans on Monday night. I'm trying to book him, but it's tough. He's a star. So is Akella Witherspoon, a star in his role, and he has stepped in. He was on the street at the beginning of the season, into that starting lineup. Him and Darius Williams has taken over those starting jobs and provided some stability, and he made a great diving catch on a ball that went off poor Trey McBride's head. It was a little heartbreaking to see Trey McBride after this game because he's had a tough season. He finally gets a touchdown in this game. He's an all-pro candidate, one of the best players at his position in the league, goes 12 for 123. But yes, the final decisive play in this game bounces off his helmet, doesn't get his head around quick enough on a play. There was some quick pressure on Kyler Murray, and the Rams win 13-9. I don't know why I was surprised, because this was such a way for the Seahawks season to end. It felt very fitting, and it felt very fitting for the Cardinals to lose this way. And yet I was surprised. I kind of thought Kyler was playing well, and they were moving the ball better, and that they at least were going to score here and make the Rams try to tie the game with a field goal. It was not to be, and the Rams are 10-6 despite their offense struggling so much in this game.
Yeah, and those offensive struggles are ones that I think at a certain point, because you look back at that game against Buffalo and it's like, well, the Rams can do this. I've said for weeks that the Rams are going to have this puncher's chance, but the plays just weren't there. Matthew Stafford did have a nice run in this game, but looked to be having some trouble getting away from this Cardinals pass rush. And as you know, all credit to Witherspoon for making that play, but the Cardinals could have very easily won this game if Trey McBride is able to separate there. Maybe there's a flag on that play. I know McBride would have liked to get the holding call, but ultimately he gets his head around and gets his hands on the football. He catches it, and we're talking about Cardinals-Rams with an opportunity Seahawks-Rams with an opportunity to settle it. Instead, it's another one of these late-season losses for the Cardinals where they're so close, but whether it's offense, whether it's defense, and a lot of times it's Kyler turning the ball over. I know that there's folks that say that Kyler could have put a better ball there. He hit Trey McBride in the face.
Yeah.
Regardless of the exact position of where the football is, he hit him in the face.
Yeah. Cam Kitchens had a big interception earlier in this game, and if it sounds like we're being a little hard on the Rams, they were doubled up in terms of first downs in this game. They gave up almost 400 yards. And yet, Nick, to give them credit, their pass rush was pretty great, and especially in big moments, Verse and Fisk and Turner and Young, who have really been such a story for them, held up enough to let the offense get into the game eventually and get the win 13-9.
Yeah, this team is becoming a chameleon because they've won in so many different ways this year. They've looked bad, really bad early in the season. They figured it out to get back to 500. Then I feel like they spent all of their offensive energy in that shootout win over the Bills because in the last 3 games, they've fallen under 20 points each time, but they've won all 3 games because now suddenly they're a defensive team, I guess. 12-6 over the Niners, 19-9 over the Jets, 13-9 over the Cardinals, and it starts with that front that you just mentioned. That's why I love their draft when they selected Fisk and Verse in the first 2 rounds. I thought it was a great way to build from the interior on the defensive side of the ball where they were lacking in the pass. And if this is who they are, the only thing that we're missing now is playoff implications in what would have been kind of a gross, low-scoring affair against the Seahawks next week based on how the Seahawks played against the Bears. But congrats to the Rams. You're at 10-6 now with 1 game left to play. And I think this is one of those stories that despite the success they had last year, when we looked at them in week 4 this year, nobody would have thought they would have been here at this point. And
Fair.
yet, here they are.
Fair. They scored 44 in that game against the Bills. They have scored exactly 44 in the 3 games since. And McVay wasn't really that happy after this game. Jordan Rodriguez, the athletic, kind of pointed out to me, and I went back and watched it. And yeah, he was very clipped with his answers. And you could say he was saying the right thing, that the years in his league has taught him that he wants to enjoy it. But you can tell there's a little bit of frustration there, under 260 yards on offense for a couple straight weeks. And it's actually not that different than a lot of their season, where the defense really held on for them to win games. There was a 20-15 game against the Raiders. There was that game against the Saints where they didn't score in the first half. The first Seahawks game, their offense did not play well the whole game, and the defense held on until Matthew Stafford made some magic late. So you never know. This team is chaotic. It's unpredictable. Maybe they crank it up one more time. I'm very curious to see where the NFL puts this game. Maybe you'll have an answer by the end of this show, by the way.
The Cardinals did almost have the ball for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the Rams only got 54 offensive plays, so that may have played a role as well. And they did a lot of that without James Conner too.
That's the thing, is Kyler had 5 or 6 awesome throws in this game, and he ran the ball well. He keeps saying he wants to run more. He wants to run more next year. Jonathan Gannon had a bad decision, I thought, at one point to kick a field goal. He ends up having to go for a much longer 4th down later. I thought McVay, after a really long Cardinals drive, made a bad decision not to go for it on 4th and inches. I'm a little worried how Cooper Kupp has kind of not produced late in the season. He's clearly not where he was, but it's just putting too much on Puka Nacua. So, yeah, the Rams, they went into Sunday needing a handful of victories and strength of victory. As we're taping this, we're still waiting to see what happens on Sunday night. So let's go to the NFC East, where the Eagles still had some business to do.
They go to a pistol formation. It goes back to Barkley. Barkley breaks the tackle. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He is at the 25-yard line. He is down at the 25-yard line. Let's see what he has right now as he goes to the 25-yard line. He has just broken the 2,000-yard rushing mark. Saquon Barkley goes into NFL history.
Love that. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on WIP. Eagles win 41-7. Nice touch by Nick Sirianni to take a timeout. It's like kind of an NBA style where you take the stars out of the game with 2 minutes left so the whole crowd could really cheer. I hope that was Nick Sirianni leaving Saquon in for his 31st carry to break 2,000 so he can rest him next week. We'll see, because he's only 100-plus yards away from breaking the rushing record. I also like he broke 2,016 games.
Yes, it was. So all the asterisk folks out there will have a chance to talk about it with Brock Bowers and Mike Ditka here in a little bit. But yeah, he does it in 16 games. And just an incredible season for Saquon in a game that seemed dicey at the start, where Cooper Rush has come out. He survives a pick 6 from CJ GJ, who really just caught him peeking on an in-breaking route and comes up with a pick 6, but Cooper Rush comes right back down the field. He gets a touchdown pass to Jalen Tolbert on Quinyon Mitchell. And you're thinking, oh, this is going to be the Eagles absolutely washed them out after that, including some of the guys who couldn't make key plays late in the loss to the Washington Commanders. Devontae Smith had 2 touchdowns, could have very easily been 3 touchdowns. I already talked about CJ GJ. He got another pick after that, and remember, he got run from the game for multiple personal foul calls, and this is it. This is what this Eagles team can be, despite this late season spoiler Dallas team that We believed again in the Carolina Panthers against them. They actually kind of blew them out. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their season hinges on these last couple of weeks because they couldn't get a win against this Cowboys team. And then they come in there to Philadelphia against their backup quarterback and get blown out 41-7.
Yeah, surprising. And a great show of force that Devontae Smith could go 6 for 120, gets a couple touchdowns. Saquon gets 167 in the game to get over 2,000. And yeah, Kenny Pickett, who actually left the game after taking a pain-killing injection for his ribs, according to Mike Florio, before the game and at halftime, and they're running him with the tush push. A little dicey there. He scores a touchdown. Then Tanner McKee comes in. This line might be even better than Trubisky. He only threw 4 passes. He had 2 touchdowns for 54 yards. He's feeding Devonta and A.J. Brown's fantasy owners. Way to go, Tanner McKee.
Yeah, those of you who thought that the Eagles might have a tough time because of their backup quarterback, you got both backups, and they still dominated. No, I mean, this is one of those wins that you expect from a team that's superior, but it's a rivalry game, so you never know. And yet they came out and just dominated front to back. And, like you just said, Saquon breaks 2,000 rushing yards. That's fun. I would like to see him play next week just for history's sake, but it doesn't matter. You're going to the playoffs.
I really hope they don't. I just think that's so stupid and short-sighted. What a great advantage it is to know your seeding when you don't have the advantage that the top seed will have in terms of the bye week, and you can rest a guy who needs to be fresh and has had a huge workload. I personally will be shocked if they go for the record. Also,
he's not going to play.
I think the 17th game thing, it doesn't matter, but you're going for a record where you would need the 17th game to get it anyways. He's at 345 carries. The stats of guys who go that high, it's usually not good for the rest of their career. So let's just save him. It just seems so obvious. I really think they will, actually. I really think they will. They're an analytically minded organization. I think they will sit him.
It is the only sensible play to not play Saquon Barkley. You could make the case that having him in to get this carry to go over 2,000 yards might have been a questionable call as well, but it's good to hit the number. It's good for the offensive line. It's good for Saquon. You heard the explosion from the fans there in Philadelphia that got to see it at home. I think it may be worth doing just to have Saquon be able to celebrate with those folks at the link. If this is a road game, it may be a little bit different. But yeah, just the game was, the 17th game was added for a whole bunch of reasons that had nothing to do with records and a whole lot to do with, compensation for people who aren't Saquon Barkley.
Right.
I think it's fine. Saquon's compensation is finally set here. We had some issues with that previously. Why play? Literally why?
Also, life is short, and they got to do something really special that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And it was a little risky, but you got it done. To have to get over 165 to get it done is kind of amazing. He's at almost 2,300 yards from scrimmage. It's just a magical pickup. I'm really looking forward to watching them in the playoffs. They're going to have the 2 seed. We have to wait to see and find out who they could be playing. A few different options there. Let's take a break. There are a couple games here after the break that maybe didn't have the playoff implications that the previous games had, but there was a division that still needs to be decided. We're going to end the show with NFC South.
Oh.
After we take a trip to the Superdome and just kind of get a couple games out of the way.
Powers and Myers both to the right. Shotgun. O'Connell's looking that way. He's scrambling. He's trying to escape the pocket. He's throwing. Oh, there's a wide open man in the end zone. Back pylon. No signal yet for Tucker. Touchdown Raiders. O'Connell had to get out of the pocket. He was looking and looking, and Tucker was wide open. That's 6 for the Raiders, and they capitalize on the Jack Jones picks for a touchdown.
Break up the Las Vegas Raiders. 2-game winning streak, ruining their draft position. No, they should be trying to win for Antonio Pierce, and Aiden O'Connell should be out there trying to prove my most lukewarm take right, which is that Aiden O'Connell is an NFL quarterback, and that he's going to have like a 9-year career as a perfectly solid NFL backup, and that's an excellent outcome for a backup quarterback taken in the 4th round, and I think he's putting it on tape. I think he knows how to play, and I think he played really well for most of this game. Raiders win 25-10. That's their 4th win of the year. Saints fall to 5-11. That was Jason Horowitz on KRLV, by the way. And one of the more surprising things, you just never know, Shook, in a day like this, is that you could watch a Raiders-Saints game on your second screen in the morning, and you could say the quarterback play in this game between Rattler and AOC in the first half was awesome. They both were playing really, really well. And AOC mostly kept it going, and Rattler didn't, and that's why you look at the final score.
And that's the story of the Saints and the Spencer Rattler experience. You know, just when you think he's starting to build a little bit of steam, he throws a couple of picks that makes you second guess him. Have we ever seen a team that feels they've already fired their coach that feels more like they're going to make more changes in the offseason than these Saints? Like, you're playing a Raiders team that, they're coming off the high of winning last week, but it's still the Raiders. It's still, you let Amir Abdullah go 20 for 115 on you. This is a team that has struggled in that area for decent portions of this season. I mean, I don't know. I not to go with losers first in this situation, but I'm just like, Saints, what do you book your flights to Cancun already?
It's been a tough season. They don't have many offensive players out there with Spencer Rattler for him to throw the ball to. And Juwan Johnson had a big drop in this game. There were other mistakes. I came up with the scenario that could possibly get Mickey Loomis fired, that it would have to be something drastic, which would be losing in primetime in an embarrassing shutout and then losing to the Raiders convincingly at home.
Yeah.
And it happened. He hit the parlay. So we'll see. I think that there's great mystery there. The biggest story of this game were the records that Brock Bowers set. There's a lot of them. Number 1, he set the all-time receiving yards record for rookie tight ends. And as you mentioned, it broke Mike Ditka's record, which was a record for over 60-plus years.
1961.
That's incredible. When you have a record that long, it's like Norm Van Brocklin still has the single-game passing yard record, which is crazy if you think about it. I mean, if you're adjusting for inflation, Ditka going for that much back then is like 1,700 yards. And he was never the same again because he had so many injuries. Still had a Hall of Fame career, but never a season like that. So that's really impressive. But that's not it. He also, Brock Bowers, broke the Puka rookie receptions record for anyone. That's pretty cool. So receiving yards at tight end. He had already broken the tight end record for receptions like weeks ago. Rookie receptions. And then I think this is an underrated one. In the long history of the Raiders, Oakland, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, no one has ever caught more passes. Brock Bowers broke that record today, too, and he did it in a tight little 16 games, breaking Darren Waller's record from a few years ago. So, Brock Bowers, I love you, man. The celebration in the very crowded Saints locker room was cool. They all were like really celebrating with Bowers. So a nice moment for the Raiders.
Yeah, and again, a message that if you don't get your quarterback, if you fall back in the draft, sometimes it's like, oh well, we'll just have to take this guy who may be going to Canton one day, and you live with that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that again? Can you do that 2 years in a row?
I don't think so.
No, you can't. Cam Jordan was staying after the game, according to the reporters. They are taking pictures with his family on the field. So it could be his last game. He said it's not up to him, that he plans to play football next year, whether it's with this. He really hopes it's in the black and gold, but that'll be up to the Saints. Obviously, could be a lot of changes there. Let's go to another game, which is going to have big impact on draft seeding, draft positioning. It's the Jaguars. It's the Titans. It's in Jacksonville.
Empty backfield. Mack drops the throw. He's looking. Fires it to the left side. Corner of the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! Brian Thomas Jr. for the score!
When are teams going to learn to not cover Brian Thomas Jr. in man coverage?
Yeah, maybe next season. It seems absolutely crazy. Nice ball there by Mac Jones. I watched way too much of this game. That was Frank Frangie and Jeff Lageman on WJXL, because we got this picks competition on Game Day View, and I kind of felt like, for some reason in my heart, that this was going to be the swing game, and I was wrong. I picked the wrong team. And Mac Jones did not play well in this game, but his 2 touchdown throws were both awesome plays. That was a great throw by him, great catch by Thomas, and then the first one to Parker Washington was an incredible toe tap by Washington. Jaguars win 20-13 in a game they got out 13-0, Shook, and never looked back, at least not too much.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those weird games where you're like, both these teams are not very good. Both of them are playing with backup quarterbacks, but one team has an awesome receiver, and his name's Brian Thomas Jr. Like, they did whatever they could to get him the ball as much as possible, kind of like Malik Neighbors earlier in the show. They ran a jet sweep to him as well, and it picked up a big gain that preceded the touchdown pass to Parker Washington. Their offense moved enough to put those points on the board, and then they just kind of held on. Josh Hines-Allen had a couple of really nice splash plays in a row. The weird thing about this is for two teams that came in at 3-12, they had a lot of energy. Like, I know you're playing for your job, obviously, right? Like, you're playing for future employment and everything else and for pride and whatever else. But they were fired up, and it was raining like crazy in Jacksonville. The conditions weren't great. Travis Etienne should have had a touchdown run, and he slipped as soon as he got through the hole, which was a big bummer for me because I want to see him score. But they played with a ton of passion, and it felt good to see them, come away victorious, get the season sweep of the Titans, and do it by leaning, on Brian Thomas.
Yeah, shout out to the fans that stayed for that game. It was tough conditions, a lot of empty seats, but the Jaguars fall down to 5th, according to Tankathon, in terms of the draft. The Titans are up to 2nd. The Patriots are potentially playing the Bills' backup next week, so that'll give the Titans something to root for. They could wind up with the number 1 pick either way. They're in a good position if they lose next week, I believe, against the Colts. I don't know if we need to say too much. Brian Thomas, 80 catches, 1,181 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
That's a solid rookie year. And then we look at what Neighbors did. Jaden might win the award. How did LSU lose 3 games last year?
Right.
I have no idea.
Great point. All right, let's get to the NFC South. So we saved this for the end because obviously Sunday Night Football involves the Falcons. It's pretty simple. Either the Bucs or the Falcons are going to win the NFC South. The Falcons have the edge entering the week. The Bucs, though, they have a chance here because it's really a 3-team for 2-spot situation between the Bucs, the Falcons, and the Commanders. So even if the Bucs didn't win the division, they know they might have a chance at this wild card. Obviously, they had to get the win over the Panthers. Let's go to Raymond James Stadium.
Quack, quack. And Hacker has it blocked. Tampa Bay's got it. Scoop and score. J.J. Russell. Buccaneers doing it from all angles. Chef's kiss.
It's the Buccaneers.
I love it. Great job there by Patrick. A professional host like Patrick or Ian Eagle would have set that up a little better by telling the audio audience that there's a duck on the field right before the Panthers are setting up to punt. And, yeah, that punt block is what made this thing a laugher, but it was on the way. 48-14, an offensive masterclass by the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. 5 incompletions, 5 touchdowns. Bucky Irving was over 100 yards from scrimmage in the first half of this game. Goes over 170 yards from scrimmage total for the second time this season against the Panthers. He's had an entire season just against the Panthers, 48-14. And I've never seen a quarterback play better than Bryce Young in a game that they lost by 34 points, but it really didn't matter. This is what the Buccaneers can do, and I don't even think I'm test driving this case. This is the case I'm making, Shook.
Okay.
The Buccaneers are the team you don't want to play in the NFC.
Ooh.
And now if you say that, you have to kind of say, well, you can only say one of those teams are the teams, and they can't be one of the best teams. So basically, the options are like Rams, Bucks, Packers, or even whatever happens with the Falcons, Commanders. You have to kind of pick one of those teams. And I say the Buccaneers are that team because to me, the Buccaneers, they'll have their down games defensively, but I do think the best Buccaneers game on offense is right there with the Bengals and the Bills and the Ravens, and I don't want to play that team. And that's who the Bucs are to me. And I know this was against the Panthers, but we've seen it against a lot of teams.
Especially when you have a guy like, and I know his name is Bucky, but today he's Ducky Irving.
Hey!
Goes for 190 from scrimmage. I had to squeeze that one in there. No, I think that if you look at the way that they played against the Cowboys, like they couldn't piece it together, right? And then suddenly they explode for a touchdown drive, and they nearly get down there again at the end of the game. And it shows you that like you can't count them out, and that they can just sneak up on you and explode at any time. And that's what makes you a scary team in the playoffs, like you said. So I'm kind of on board with that. I'm more on board with that after what we saw with the Packers today against the Vikings than I might have been a week ago. And when you have Baker Mayfield go 27 of 32 for 359 and 5 touchdowns, that kind of justifies it, which, by the way, you said probably the best game from a quarterback I've seen, and then paused. I was like, is he going to give Baker flowers? And then you pivoted to Bryce Young.
Oh, no, Baker was incredible. Let's throw up his passing chart from today. This was one of his best games of the season. Anytime he missed a throw, I was stunned because he was just so accurate. Most of it was to the middle of the field, but he was really spreading it all around. 359 yards, 5 touchdowns. It's just some laser shots over the middle. Was so sharp, really well protected, it must be said, and that's been a huge part of their formula all season, and they ran block really well today. But the vision and the patience out of Bucky Irving combined with the accuracy of Baker is just like, this team's awesome when it's rolling. It's not gonna do this every week, or else they'd be 15-2. But they are capable of doing this.
Yeah, the whole offensive option playbook was available against the Panthers team, where Bucky Irving goes 1,000 yards rushing on the season. 265 of those this season have come against the Carolina Panthers here in the past 5 weeks. And so that everything's available to them. They beat this divisional opponent at home when they needed to. They can do this. They can also be the team that struggled against the Dallas Cowboys in a game that they needed a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but that was their only loss in a while. Although they struggled against the Panthers. They probably should have lost that game in overtime a while ago, and it was big that they pulled that out. Their defense is, to me, the bigger concern. They got the Panthers off the field quite a bit. They were pressuring Bryce Young more than he normally is. But, man, like I said, he ended up with 203 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game on 28 throws. Like the first drive of the game, he hits a 31-yard slot fade, just a beautiful throw to Thielen. Second throw of the game, he's backing up while he's under total pressure, gets slammed while he hits Jalen Coker. And then the third throw of the game is an absolutely perfect red zone, 17-yard throw to Thielen over the top. And it's just like he can do it all, and he had a number of really nice throws in this game. Now, they had some empty drives, but they had absolutely no rushing game. Chuba Hubbard is now out for the season, and he was under a lot of pressure. Just that story is continuing. Bryce right now is kind of like I am with Drake May. He's not the only thing that matters with them, but if you're a Panthers fan, you just want to see him continue to play well, and maybe they don't hurt their draft seeding. That happened. The Buccaneers got a ton of yak in this game. Evans had a big game, 8 for 97 and 2 touchdowns. He really might do it, Patrick.
Just 85.
He is now 85 yards away. This is also his 6th season with 10 or more touchdowns, which I think is pretty cool. Not that he needs to add much to his Hall of Fame case, but he's doing it.
He's in.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah,
and he was before the season, to me.
Yeah, I think he was too. It's tricky when you haven't made a lot of All-Pros, which he hasn't, but plenty of guys have made it in without those if they've stacked up seasons like he has. Jalen McMillan, by the way, induct him into the Fantasy Football Playoff Hall of Fame. In terms of if you picked him up, I guarantee you he is on a million championship teams, 2 touchdowns. Good job to all the owners out there that played him throughout. Good job by you. Patrick Claybon, once again, we say goodbye to you before we move on to a very important Sunday night football game.
Enjoy the game, guys. I enjoyed my time.
He's getting it done with Scott Pioli. Let's go to Sunday night football in Landover.
The place is ready to explode. 2:45 to go in overtime. 3rd and goal at the 2. Jaden in the gun, Rodriguez to his right. 2 tight ends to the left. Here's the staff. Jaden's going to throw for it. He does. Into the end zone. Caught. Seconds. Who wants to go to the playoffs? Touchdown! Touchdown once again. They win in overtime. We'll see you in the postseason. Are you freaking kidding me? This is a missile by Jaden Daniels.
That was a missile. And I want to go to the playoffs. Bram Weinstein and London Fletcher, WBIG, one of the calls of the year. for one of the moments of the year. The Washington Commanders have done it. They've come all the way back from a miserable season in Dan Quinn's first year with Jaden Daniels. They are playoff bound with a 30-24 overtime victory over the Falcons. And Nick, when I think back on this season, I will think about so many different signature Jaden Daniels moments. It feels like he is the center of this season, even though they're a 6 or a 7 seed in the NFC. It's the win over the Bengals on Monday Night Football. It's the Hail Mary against Chicago, which started the Chicago tailspin, by the way, and kick-started this Washington run. It's the victory over the Eagles after that 4th and long last week. And then, yes, a 30-24 victory over the Falcons, out-dueling Michael Penix, who was up and down, but pulled off some Jaden Daniels magic of his own with some 4th and longs to force overtime. But when that coin flip landed on Washington, and maybe I'm being a little emotional because I had the Falcons winning this game. It's crucial. It was, to me, I was rooting for the Falcons. But when I saw that coin flip land on tails for the Commanders, I was like, there's no way the Falcons are stopping them here. They're not going to force a field goal. I've watched this entire game, and I've watched this movie over and over again. It's amazing that a rookie quarterback just feels that bankable in the biggest moments.
Yeah, what a game. I mean, what an experience for Commanders fans. And this is the fitting way for them to reach the postseason. It truly is, because of the moments that you just described. The Hail Mary, the game against the Eagles recently, last week. It's been a magical season for this team with a rookie quarterback who was not the consensus number one. He was the next guy off the board. You didn't know what you were going to get, and we saw it early in the season, and it ends not for the year, but it ends with a big landmark moment, him getting them to the playoffs by overcoming what was kind of a bit of a fourth quarter meltdown. They had the holding penalty on the goal line, which wiped out a touchdown. They have to settle for a field goal. Yep. They give up that drive to tie the game, and then they go 3 and out immediately after. There was a period there that when the Falcons were driving down the field late where I almost sent you a text and said, too much time for Jaden, because they were within range outside of 2 minutes.
Yep.
Obviously, he doesn't end up with that much time, but that just speaks to the power of this kid and the magic that he brings to the Commanders, and we saw it in overtime.
And it's a team game, and the Commanders have found a way to get just enough stops. It's a complimentary game. They come out of halftime down 17-7. Strange first half, because I thought Washington was really getting whatever they wanted, but they had a really nice play called where Caden Ellis intercepted Daniels. They confused him with kind of a designer look, and it worked. And they did force a couple punts because of a bunch of penalties in Washington, but they were running the ball so well. Jaden Daniels ends up with 127 yards on 16 carries. Just felt like he could get it anytime he wanted to on the ground, and Brian Robinson chipped in 60. But they're down 17-7 at halftime. They come back, and their next 3 drives are 7 minutes and 47 seconds long on a 15-play touchdown drive, 7 minutes long on a 14-play touchdown drive, and it's mostly on the ground. And then they have that long field goal drive that takes up 5.5 minutes. They had the touchdown called back, and they end up kicking the field goal. And you just think, man, this offense and Cliff Kingsbury are beating all the allegations. I'll get to the Falcons mishandling things in a second, but I do appreciate that it's an offense-first team, and Dan Quinn kept going for it on 4th down. They were 3 for 3 on 4th down. He has some game management things to work on, perhaps, as well, but he kind of knows where his bread is buttered. He had injuries on both sides of the ball, but especially on the offensive line, and yet he could see it, like, we're picking up yardage, and so he was aggressive, kept going for it on 4th down, and they leaned into what they do well, and they're going to the playoffs because of it.
Yeah, and the way that they come through in these clutch situations is really what stands out to me, because this is a team that wasn't supposed to be here. This is a team that had the worst defense in the NFL last season. They're under a new head coach. They got a new quarterback. And you speak about those 4th down conversions, the one to McNichols where he catches the ball and then extends beyond the line to gain for the 1st down. Just one of many great plays in key spots. And that's who this team has been for so much of this season. It hasn't been perfect by any means. But how do you not get on board with that? You get a little emotional because you had the Falcons there. How can you not get emotional about this if you just love football? What a fantastic game we saw.
When I say emotional, too, I just mean, like, it's almost like I'm a fan of the team, and I'm just thinking, oh, there's no way they stop. Now, and it's because I'm loving watching Daniels. But it's a great point, Shook, because the first is a Zacchaeus touchdown. Great play by Daniels in the first half, throwing it against his body. But really good catch. On a night where McLaurin has 7 targets for 5 yards, A.J. Terrell with an awesome performance covering him most of the day. That touchdown catch to win the game by Ertz, Fletcher was right. That was a missile, and it was like 2 inches off the ground. I didn't think he caught it live because I just thought it was such a hard catch, and you saw it going to the ground, and I thought, oh, man, they're going to have to take everyone off the field. But no, he clearly caught it. Like, great strong hands. That great play by McNichols. Zacchaeus had big plays. Crowder stepped up the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, props to them. Dante Fowler had some plays defensively. You know, they did pick off Penix. They forced a couple fumbles by Penix. They weren't lucky enough to fall on either one, but they forced a couple, and so they do enough. Now, let's start with a negative with the Falcons. Raheem Morris just doesn't show the calm and the quick thinking in big moments with the clock that, you know, your average Madden player would be all over. And I know it's different. But I'm not going to give him slack on this one because it's your job, and it wasn't a confusing situation. They get the ball back after one of the most surprising 3-and-outs of the entire season. You're right. Penix leads them down to a courageous drive, and we can talk about that longer in a second if you want. But they force a 3-and-out from Daniels where there's a drop on 3rd down. You know, he was a little inaccurate on 1st down, and they get the ball back with over a minute to go. No, rather 40 seconds to go. Penix, who's had a lot of nice deep outs in this game, throws it to Mooney for 25 yards to the Falcons' 44-yard line. They don't take a timeout there. It was about 33 seconds left, and they blow 16 seconds off the clock. Well, surely that's got to be their last timeout, right? No, you had 2 left there. That's not even a thought. Like, of course you can't blow 15 seconds. They end up not even using the timeouts. They go into overtime with an extra timeout, and they only used another one to get set, like it was with the clock stop. They didn't even end up using another one of those timeouts. They get a PI on their second-to-last play in regulation that gives them a 56-yard attempt. Riley Patterson comes up short. He's a guy who's bounced around. He's a replacement kicker. It happens. I thought it, like most viewers, probably thought it was going in, and the Falcons are winning this game. But it just reminds you, they would have had 3 more plays there, and it's just crazy because it's an unforced error, and it's a rare thing that we can say from the outside, you 100% just made the wrong decision. And so I'm going to say it.
Honestly, that's fair, but I also, not in defense of them, but, you know, just to give them a little bit of a break and some grace here, I think the environment had something to do with it because Washington had a hard time getting organized too. At some point in that overtime drive, they called a timeout just to get Jaden Daniels a breather. There were multiple instances, especially in the 4th quarter, where both teams struggled to get lined up, get set before the play clock ran out.
They looked tired. I thought Raheem Morris should have used his timeouts in overtime just to get his defense set. He didn't at all. But that's fair.
Yeah,
I think they were just
a frantic
gassed.
night.
I think people are always like defense gets tired. It's like offense gets tired too. Washington was on the field like that whole second. I appreciate that. And it's a good shout out to that Washington crowd who I've seen it when they've been good, certainly the RG3 year, and there's been other little pop-up years, but you get a feeling that they're waiting to be one of the best crowds in the NFL, and they're back, and it's awesome. And they were worried about disaster scenarios. Okay, Penix gets the ball back with 4:32 to go after Atlanta finally forces the field goal with the help of the timeouts. And he has multiple 4th and longs on that drive, and he hits them, and he has a couple nice outs, and he also misses some throws. He just has surprising inaccuracy on some throws, but he makes really difficult throws to the outside. And that 4th and long that he hits to Pitts with how much time was left? 1:19 to go. You know, that could have been one of the throws of the year. That's like a rookie stamping his moment where Riley Patterson hits that freaking kick. All we're talking about is how great Penix was to finish this game, and he never even gets the ball back in overtime. So props to Penix, who I thought had an up-and-down game, but the flashes were there, and the finish was absolutely awesome. And through no fault of his own, they end up losing this game because he doesn't get the ball in overtime.
What was the number one attribute when he came out of college that people talked about positively with him?
Arm strength? poise.
Exactly. And
Okay.
guess what showed completely
Yeah.
on that drive and on that throw to Pitts on 4th down? That live arm, baby. He fit that thing in there, and Pitts made a great catch. Fans of Kyle Pitts, who think he's been in jail since he's been with the Falcons, are eager to see his release if he's got a quarterback like Michael Penix who's not afraid to throw him the football. It was fun. I mean, they lost the game, but it was so fun to watch.
Yeah, and they might not make the playoffs now, though, because of it. So they're 8-8. Commanders are in at 11-5. They're actually the 6th seed right now, and the Packers are the 7. Depending on how much they care about seeding, we'll find out in Week 18. We can get into that during the week. But if the Falcons had hit that kick, Nick, Commanders would have been in a situation next week where they had to beat Dallas to guarantee their spot in the playoffs. And look, Dallas beat them before. Dallas is at home. You just never know. That could have been a nervous, frisky type of situation. Commanders fans, especially after potentially having blown this lead at the end, that would have been a very nervous week. Instead, it's the Falcons who now go into next week without control. And if you're a Falcons fan, you're just adding this to the list of improbable, just weird, tough ways for seasons to end, because the Buccaneers are hosting the Saints. And the Buccaneers win the division if they beat Spencer Rattler and a dead Saints team. And I know surprising things happen in the NFL, but it sure feels like the Falcons season is over because of this little sequence. And that's why that timeout thing, it looms. It's not like the whole game came down to that. The Falcons defense is getting run over, but I think their season is essentially over. They have the Panthers next week, and they'll probably win that game, and they'll probably end up out of the playoffs at 9-8.
Yeah, and then when you take stock of the entire season, what do you come away with? Because you went through the whole Kirk Cousins ordeal. You saw him benched. You saw the start of your future, hopefully, at quarterback with Michael Penix. But where do you go from here? Are you happy about this year, or do you feel like you missed an opportunity based on how you started this season?
It's somewhere in between, because I think Raheem's defense showed some progress.
Not overtime tonight.
Yeah, not really in the second half tonight. Showed some progress down the stretch, and you're starting kind of a new regime. But this was also a go time type of season because they have so many young, talented players. That's why they gave Kirk all that money. I think you got to feel good about what happened with Penix over the last 2 weeks, and hopefully he closes strong. But it's going to feel like a missed opportunity. They also would have been underdogs in that first game against either the Vikings or the Lions. So ultimately, it was probably just changing the week that their heart was broken, and they maybe wouldn't have been close. Drake London was awesome in this game. Caden Ellis was awesome. Actually, I think there's some good things to feel if you're a Falcons fan, and look, that they're going to get with a better record. All right, so let's set up next week's schedule before we go. For the last time this season, the Browns are in an island game. I apologize. And I apologize to everyone else. The schedule makers, understandably, because there weren't really many options, decided to go with AFC North on Saturday. I think if the Falcons had won this game tonight, the schedule would have been totally different. Because I actually think the Rams would have been playing on Saturday. It would have been a totally different setup. But this is the schedule we have now. Ravens 11-5. They're playing on the early game on Saturday. That's at 1:30 Eastern. If they win the division before the Steelers even play. Saturday night, that game is going to matter. Steelers, Bengals. Steelers could be playing for seeding, which could be important because it's the difference between playing either the Ravens again or the Texans. Knowing the Steelers, they're going to play to win in that game. The Bengals will be playing to try to keep their playoff hopes alive going into Sunday. The Sunday morning slate will be when the NFC South is decided. Both the Falcons and the Bucs will play in the morning games. That's really the only thing that matters in the morning games. Washington playing for seeding, Green Bay as well, but it's 6-7. It's not that big of a deal. In the afternoon slate, we finally have the Chiefs and the Broncos, and that will be the Broncos most likely playing for a playoff spot, but either the Dolphins have to win at the exact same time, or they'll know if the Bengals had won on Saturday. And yes, I should have mentioned that the Dolphins, still an important part of Week 18. They are at 125, opposite that Broncos-Chiefs game and some other games that don't matter as much, like Seahawks-Rams. It's kind of crazy because the Seahawks and the Rams, the division's over, but they're literally going to tie, potentially, if the Seahawks win that game, in division record conference record, common opponents. Like, they are down to the 5th tiebreaker, but we just already know how it's all going to work, even if the Seahawks win that game, and that's why they are eliminated. And yes, Sunday Night Football, Lions and Vikings for the 1 seed. Fun way to end the season. Reminds me of a couple years back when the Lions technically had nothing to play for, Shook, and they played their hearts out, and they beat the Packers, knocked them out of the playoffs. And to me, they had already had a lot of moments that you knew they were legit, but that to me was a next level moment. So I look forward to that with you next Sunday.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. That was the start of the Lions as we know them now, when they took it to the Packers and went into the offseason with a lot of momentum. And we not the same setup for this Sunday night, but a lot still at stake on Sunday night.
Okay, so I guess, I don't know if Patrick would agree that momentum can continue from 1 week to the next in the playoffs. Does that count, or is it just within a game? Who really knows? We'll find out next week. Hit the music. It's time. Whew. I'm fired up. We only got 16 games left of the regular season. No, 17, because we got a Monday night. It's going to be beautiful. Me and Shook. Look, when Jaden Daniels is stamping his status as a freaking legend, as a rookie, that's when you know football is back. We'll see you Monday.